Today we're going to talk about one of the most badass women that you've never heard of, Virginia Hall. Now, Virginia Hall, she was born in 1906 to a pretty wealthy American family. She was supposed to marry into an even more wealthy family. Her life was set, but that wasn't enough for this young woman. In just her normal lifestyle of badassery, she loved to hunt and even arrived one day to school wearing a wristband made of live snakes. I'm not making that shit up. It's part of the museum tour. So anyways, what did Virginia Hall do? She was the most decorated civilian in World War II. She was a spy, and a spy among spies. This woman was untouchable. And you're probably wondering why you've never heard of Virginia Hall, even though she does have her own exhibit at the CIA museum. She's that fucking good. To go ahead and quote Miss Virginia Hall herself, why don't you know more about her? Many of my friends were killed for talking too much, so like a fucking gangster, she comes through the door. So keep in mind, during this time in the war, women weren't really viewed as any kind of combatant, so she was able to skirt under the radar for the majority of her time. Virginia Hall would later be known as the woman with the limp, because she had a wooden prosthetic leg because she shot her own foot off. I'm not making it up. She was hunting, shot herself in the foot, got gangrene. They chopped it off. She still decided to become a fucking spy. This all happened before she was a spy. So World War II kicked off. She was already in France and she decided to be a volunteer to drive an ambulance. Well, Nazi Germany came a-knocking and she took off to Britain. By sheer chance, she got in touch with a member of British intelligence. Keep in mind, the United States at this point in time wasn't hiring female spies. So with a very limited amount of information, she went ahead and trained up and went right back into France where she posed as an American reporter. I'm gonna go ahead and do some foreshadowing here and quote the Gestapo. Gestapo, get fucking that. Why is there sh in that? There's not an SH. German's weird. Anyways, she is the most dangerous of Allied spies. We must find and destroy her. She pissed off the secret police so much that they put out a public thing that they want to find and kill her. I don't even know if we have male spies who did that shit. Virginia Hall was more or less invisible when this war first kicked off. She would play on their chauvinism a little bit and allow them to hold doors for her and be super nice, and she was incredibly unassuming. They had no idea. She then got a little bit more, shall we say, ballsy, and decided to start organizing with French resistance fighters, giving them safe houses to go to. That's about the time she started getting noticed. This forced her to be a little bit more proactive. She could change her appearance 4 times in an afternoon and was constantly changing what she looked like. The man who was actually chasing her, believe it or not, was the Gestapo, I can't get that word out, infamous Klaus Barbie, known as the Butcher of Lyon. He tortured and killed thousands in France. That's when that thing we mentioned earlier comes into play. When they posted the flyer of her saying, the enemy's most dangerous spy, we must find and destroy her. Fucking foreshadowing. You didn't. Around the end of 1942, the Nazis actually started to close the gap on Hall. So what did she do? She climbed over mountains with one fucking leg like a goddamn boss and escaped to Spain. Yeah, 50 miles over the Pyrenees Mountains. I don't even know where that is. So she gets to Spain, she gets arrested, and this is like no big deal to her. 6 weeks later, she's released and sent over to the British. And then like a fucking G, within a matter of weeks, she's like, when am I going back? I ain't done. There's still Nazis. I'm gonna fucking spy the shit out of them. The British told her that this was not a good idea and they refused to send her back. However, at this point, the Americans had taken notice. So long before the CIA existed, they were known as the OSS, I think is what they're called. The Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, before it was called the CIA. Have y'all ever seen the movie The Master of Disguise?
Am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
This woman was the human embodiment of the Master of Disguise. Because there was so many Nazis in France at this time and the Americans wanted to send her back, but they knew that it was really high risk, what did she do? She got a makeup artist to teach her new techniques so that she could change her appearance, and then she went to a dentist and had them grind down her teeth so she looked like a French milkmaid. So between 1944 and 1945, she went right back to France and she was wildly successful at this point. She was calling in airdrops, blowing up bridges, and reclaiming villages with French resistance fighters. At its peak, she had over 1,500 people working with her. After the war, the British and the France, they kind of real quietly recognized Hall's efforts. The Americans, President Truman, he wanted to recognize her publicly. She said, no, I want to stay undercover.
Why did you come under?
I'm an undercover cop.
Then like a fucking I need a new synonym, an adjective, a fucking descriptive word that just fucking explains the sheer badassery of this fucking woman, because after the war she went back to the CIA and worked there until they forced her to retire at 60 years old. She passed away in 1982, and her story, unfortunately, most of it passed away with her. Now we do have a couple of books and we know about her story. There's also a couple of movies in the work. But this woman, in at least my opinion, is probably the most wildly successful U.S. spy, male or female, of World War II. And beyond any reasonable doubt, one of the most badass women that I've ever heard of. As always, do not give in to the 22 a day. Every single one of you are amazing, and I will see you guys right here next time. Play me out.